Hello cả nhà. Nay gia đình mình sẽ lên downtown Chicago chơi nha. Tình bắt đầu chuẩn bị đi. Rồi cả nhà theo chân mình đi Chicago chơi nha. Rồi bắt đầu ra đi. Lên downtown Chicago. Hành đất. Bắt đi xe hai cái thôi hả? Xe hai đâu? Đây là. Ok. Rồi, let's go. Hello.
Move, let the light come. Let the light come.
Cả nhà thấy hai chị em mình giống nhau không? Chị gái mình nè, giống không? Mình đang trên đường đến chỗ tàu để đi vòng quanh thành phố downtown Chicago. Đúng mình. Tuyệt. Xe hai. Tuyệt. Xe hai. Pháp. Đường này giống thành đồ Huế, trên đồ Huế chứ hả? Mấy cái mặt á giống đi bộ thành đồ Huế đó.
Em mùi dâu không? Dạ, tiếp
Let's go into a bar.
Go, go. Hitler. Ăn thử đâu. Trước khi lên tàu kiểm tra check chuẩn bị lên tàu, chuẩn bị đây cả nhà.
You were there. Huh? You were there. What? You were there.
No, I thought like it's an old gamer.
No, that's.
He likes you.
Chút này có đầy đủ đi đâu. Ồ, không có đe. Đây mạc hơn đó. Ủa, tại sao mình chủ những có nhầm mạc?
They're just pulling through the bunch of parts we use. We don't anticipate using these life jackets in the event. A crew member will assist you on what to do next. We do ask them what right downstairs. Also, we have our credit card, debit card purchase, open bar. No, not open bar, but for purchase. Get to the side. The restrooms are also downstairs.
And what a city. We're a relatively young city, perhaps compared to the areas of the world from where you hail. Certainly compared to our eastern seaboard. It's residential state. Nobody's ever made their home in the old terminal warehouse about the last 7 years. Those are known as the lofts at River East. Or two aboard, and they look just fine. But I have to tell you, St. Louis did what probably anybody would do. They filed an injunction in federal court to prevent Chicago from reversing the river. And this part of the story is so Chicago. The night before the lawsuit was to be heard, the sanitary commissioners opened the gates in the middle of the day and made a flyover. And that was actually just open the last portion in May of 2021. What happens is right here to your left is the lake, to the right is the river we're going to travel on. Very congested area. So to help with the congestion, this area is made a separate roadway just for those types of transportation. It doesn't go too much further north. It goes to what we call Ohio Street Beach, or Jane Addams Park. It's one of your favorites. And on the south, it just goes really to the other side of the bridge, not very much further. But looking at the bridge, you look at the top of it, that is Lakeshore Drive, or what we call today Tusable Lakeshore Drive. And that is the lake
Quá trời là nhà chia gồm nhà cao tầng.
while you're in the town of Chicago, to travel Lakeshore Drive, Tusable Lakeshore.
Trọng tờ.
Wonderful way to see the city. One side is the lake. Engineer Hugh Young designed these bridge towers, and they are remarkably unaltered since 1937. I do say that with a little bit of a caveat, though. I've been doing this tour for many years, and then a couple years ago, they put the Navy Pier flyover and they cornered the two eastern towers. So this is 37. We warned about the impending dangers, fighting in Europe, World War II to come. Ooh, the isolationists did not care for that speech. It's called the quarantine speech. View by DeStefano, finished about 2004. It includes the townhouses and the two tall condo towers. Very much vertical living. Look at the townhouse, they're 4 stories tall. You see the steel cornice that shoots across the top? It's repeated, the two tall condo towers. What you don't see is car traffic. You say, well, it's on the backside. You're correct, but you know what? It's stronger than that. I don't know if your city's like Chicago. We didn't cherish this river as it goes through downtown until recent years. Now, any new construction along the banks, or even substantial renovation of an older building, has to have a public river walk. Dirk Lohan did this portion. He's famous in his own right. You know who Lohan's grandpa is? Mies van der Rohe. Even more well known. So we talked about both of them throughout the right over here on your right. It goes all the way to the other bank for about 5 minutes. Now don't worry, Captain Lawrence.
Thành phố Chicago là nhà cao tầng rất là đẹp cả nhà. Cái nhà tới sau lưng mình là toàn là nhà cao tầng không à.
The kids beg us to go into the water cannon. Toxic, highly polluted. They don't care what the water really is. And they go into that cannon, which is right here. So as we talk about the next building, this is the Sheraton Grand Hotel, a precast concrete postmodern structure. And R92.
Phía trước
We didn't view the river the way we do today.
mình là có
My favorite
nhà
feature
tòa nhà
to point
của
out to you is
Trung
the
này.
3 top floors here on the west end. Can you see them by themselves? Built-in security for visiting dignitaries. I will never forget when the president was, this is Bush in about 2003, he was staying there. Our boat was told, you have a waiver on the left-hand side. Thomas Druckmann, these are the upright position. So sometimes world leaders may opt to stay at the Sheraton. The bridge is 10 years older than the hotel, 1982. It's one of the largest basket bridges in the world. There's one in Spain. There's one in Spain and Hamburg that are bigger. And it has a piece of sculpture on the right if you want to take a quick peek at her. She's Chicago Rising from the Lake, done by Milton Horn in the mid-50s. She's on a downtown parking garage. It got demolished. The city, just like we do at home, kept it and forgot where they put it. Surfaced a few years ago, they added it here. On your right, does that remind you of Rockefeller Center? New Yorkers usually go, sweet. That's NBC Towers, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. 2/3 of the way up. The shoulder projections, or what we call flying buttresses. See if your arm is bent like this with your elbow raised. That's a new term. Those are very contemporary. They're paying tribute to some earlier buttresses we'll see in just a minute. Small structure on your right is University of Chicago's downtown campus. It's done by Lohan in the mid-90s. Check out that windowless west wall. Those are classrooms. I always say for the benefit of the teachers, they can relate to this, but no peeking out on the water when you're in class at U of C. Next door is the second of 5 styles we'll talk about this afternoon. What's this style? International. Glass box. Less is more. The style for which Mies is famous. We'll talk about this style off and on throughout the tour. The building was done in the mid-60s by Skidmore. And here's the building with the flying buttresses next door. This is the building I was talking about that the newer building is paying tribute to. Of all the buildings we're talking about this afternoon, this is one of the most significant. The result of an international competition in 1922. Over 260 architects from all over the world were entered to design this for the trip. Hood and Allen, New York took first place. Not just the buttresses, the whole top tower. All up to the butter tower, the cathedral along the bridge. The little Apple store in front of us, it's only a handful of years old. It's not allowed to go any higher, not to impede anyone's view. That's Norman Foster, Bridge 21, the other Charles Pierce, the Graham Anderson, goes to the right. If you look at the timber pattern, you see the fire between light between the window lines. It's very ornamented. Let your eyes front your eyes in the sun for sure. Let your eyes send it likenesses and scents. There's only 6 different shades. Everyone really made his fortune with chewing gum. They first sold soap powder and baking powder, and in the baking powder he tucks the box.
Phía sau nhà mà mình là cái khu nhà của Trung luôn cả nhà.
2004, the old Sun-Times newspaper building was there. They demolished it and purchased store 89 and the 92 stories. This is the highest price. It's already sold to all those interested. I will tell you, went on the market some years ago for $32 million. Sold for $17 billion. We naively said, didn't they get a good deal? Not that most of us could relate to $17 million. And then the newspaper said, well, that's raw space, so they have to add did all the interior work to it. So it went back on the market this past winter with the owner putting some money into it and doing some of the interior, but it was also not finished. He asked $30 million and he accepted in February $20 million. So it's sold again. Not aware of who the current owner is. Next door here on your right, piece of glass building. Some say it's right. We call this the IBM building. They wheeled me here in a wheelchair in 1969. He says, "Where's the plot of land?" His colleagues were like, "Sir, on it." So all the technologies discussed in a rather elegant building and a lot like a lot. It's his last film. These passed in 69. The building opened in 1971, 72. Here's something done by one of these students. But Goldberg, look at this one. First, I've got to tell you the nickname. Corncob Towers is perfect. Real name Marina City. But Goldberg wanted to keep people downtown. There was a flight to the burbs after World War II. Keep people here. Look how many.
Đây là tòa nhà bỏ để xe đây nha, parking xe ở thành phố Chicago thôi, downtown thôi. Nó làm rất là nhiều tầng cao tầng. Nhìn thấy ngập rất là nha.
It was incredible. The cores were gradually raised 61 plus floors up, concrete poured in the center section, pouring concrete up. Then they put the outer portion up. But on a live note, if you've seen the Allstate commercial, the car comes off the parking deck there, lands in the river. What can I tell you? We're coming down years ago on Sunday morning. Coming out on Sunday morning, you look this way, I look toward these pictures, right? It was on the floor. Man, there's a car in the river. The living room, I previously been filming that Allstate car commercial, and there is a car floating in the Chicago River. It didn't matter what I said after that. Next door, these are known as the Odd Couple. Both were done in 1987. Disparate buildings, but the gardens tie them together. One with the dark beige, west and north. Some of you locals remember this Hotel Nico. Japan Airlines Commission held at the bottom Kashmir to do that. Next door with the blue glass, standard arts associations building, stuff by Skidmore. Sciences art and seafood. Check out the glass on the up. It's got blue tint. Some say Nice never fit. Find out international Nice like the dark gray restaurant. That blue, a little too busy. Next door, go back to 1913, 1914, and this is Chicago style, which I'll be finding a couple buildings yesterday. Looking at it today, Amonic was their brand. They were a like wholesale grocers. And the good for loved in store. But look at the top two levels. A band of ornamentation between those top two levels of windows is prairie style. Your highlights on that, your eye tends to go horizontal, at least for a second. And that's prairie school emphasis. For you Chicagoans, I don't ask you to fess up, but this was one of our least favorite buildings. Pretend like you were never there. Traffic for you. Next door was Jennifer's parking garage, which was demolished in 2004. And what's here today was opened in 2009. It's the same time frame as Trump Tower. Trump Tower comes in second in height. This one is 17. This is by Eastern architects Pickard and Chilton. It's called 300 North LaSalle. It's a very energy efficient office building. Next to it is a very short building, which I think kind of throws off the perspective with the sign says Chicago School. Amazingly, that's Chicago School style, but it's nothing to do with the techniques and the technology. When you look at that building, iron or steel skeleton, no simple structure. You get much more of a glass curtain wall. That steel skeleton system, you get today's skyscrapers. Gustav Hallberg, the Swedish immigrant architect, designed that. 5,000 windows was done by Graham Anderson Post and White for Marshall Field. We tend to think of Field as retail. Not here. They wanted to wholesale furniture, and it didn't work. Why? Timing. Depression, 1930. Land of the Pentagon, which didn't open until 43, surpassed this in square. God knows what to tell you. Okay, so as we turn north, I started to say, was this is the end of the main bridge, right over to the south bridge. As we head north, this is a dismal, polluted branch of the river. In the early 1970s, Mortis and others headed up here, and what did they find? Underutilized warehouses. Moved in, made them residential lots. Neighbor on the right today is called River North, left River West. Much of it's been discovered, shall we say, meaning the rents are no longer inexpensive. We're looking at Wolf Point West by BKL Architects here. This actually was one of the most sought-after rental buildings in Chicago. Why? The nickname Little John. Do you know why? Big John Hancock go atop. Big John is the famous X-Cross racing. It's off to the east. Look through the break into there. Can you see the two antennas? The tinted windows. I'm sorry, we just don't see it much anymore because there's too many new buildings. But I'll compare that with Willis. Those are the two you could go atop. Quickly looking ahead, you see the building with blue tinted windows? And travertine marble again, it's off the bank. I like to point that out. It was designed by Minoru Yamasaki. Did the World Trade Center complex in Manhattan at the same time period. Like a complex in New York was done between about 70 and 76. This is about 1974. We talk about Aaron Montgomery Ward. He's the real owner. Yes, to Chicago. He's also a hero. Ward fought to keep Grant Park free of development. Has anybody been to Millennium Park yet? Behind the artists. That's what the north end. If you go south of there, it's Grant Park proper. Keep going south. They call that Burnham Park. Whatever you call it, it's all part of this fight that Ward led from about 1890 to 1910. 4 lawsuits, and you know who the developers were he was fighting against? His business buddies. How easy is it for any one of us to challenge our peers the way Ward did? Boy, are we lucky here to have all that parkland now. They came up here in the early 1800s, closed in 2004. 3 Ward's buildings remain. The one that Yamasaki did that we pointed out in the distance was a condo split in this one. Aaron Montgomery Ward didn't think anybody deserved a corner office. So those corners of travertine marble, you know what those are? The elevators, the restrooms, and the mechanics. We'll see somebody else later on the tour. The northern end is 1917, and the architect Richard Schmidt, Garden and Martin. And this is prairie style. Not just the band between the window levels, but the whole building is a horizontal emphasis. And when they work for Morris, they're always here. Learning today, we all automated. And then one summer, this gentleman said he worked there during the roller skating years, but he didn't skate. But to this day, if you said floor 3, the guy can still remember which goods were stored on floor 3. What is Ford's today? Did you see the Groupon sign? It's office and residential. And this is about as far north as we would go. If Captain Lawrence had gone to the right or see a brewery and part of the Board of Trade, we worked to bring trains here. All of them would have gone on the way back. We didn't live that long. We passed in 1877. Today we don't call this Ogden Island, but Goose Island. So let me tell you why. I want to take a quick peek at it. Mostly we see the buses here. This is a maintenance area for buses. Now if we were to go further, if Captain Lawrence were to go further, you can see the barge up there in the gravel yard. We're not, but we're going to turn around. So as we make the turn, I'm going to spend more time on the island, but as we make the turn, don't forget to look for the Spirit of Progress for Commerce. Can you see over to the left? You will in a minute. I don't know, I'm so taken with that piece. There she is. Okay, so the island, we talk about it as Goose Island. I usually say until 2017 it was mandated to remain light industry. And then they changed. We have residential out there now. But guess what the big name Goose Island comes from? Well, surely you're going to say the beer, which is a correct answer actually. You would know people that they're geese.
Cả nhà đây sau lưng mình là tòa nhà cao tầng. Not the camping geese flying overhead. These were domesticated. They were wing split. They were kept in pens. That's another connotation of the nickname Goose Island. So as we have down here, I'm going to tell you what's happening here today. So maybe probably know the Canadian developer named ONNI bought the 8 acres right where the buses are, the tall buildings in that area that we just passed. So nothing's been granted yet. The plans have been
walk, they added a light well. Above where you walk, they installed a second one. That's how you get light to your rooms on the west side. You want this view to the east. If you all look left, you might want to ready your cameras, come up and stand up and look at this view. Oh, we're proud of our views. I tease the New Yorkers, as beloved as Manhattan is. You all have the buildings, the people, the energy. We get the vistas. We can't take any credit. It's geography. It's because our river goes every which way. On your right is 444 West Lake, and that is done by Pickard and Chilton. It's a 50-some-story office building. Look at that beautiful red sculpture, designed by Santiago Calatrava, Spanish architect and artist. It's called the Constellation. In front is the public river walk. You see the round air intake holes? Those are the right-of-way for the trains. And then there's a plaza. You have to give us access to the river. The South Branch, where we're now headed, train yards on the West Bank. They take precedence over anything you might want to develop. The building to the right, it's called 150 North Riverside by Jim Gensch. And I cannot tell you how many passengers say, whoa, looks like it could topple over on the river. Indeed it does, but it doesn't. It's perfectly balanced. They only use 25% of their lot line. How does it maintain its balance? Look at these big gears coming down these columns. It's thin. Go underground 110 feet, holds the building in place. Also, on top of the building are huge containers of water. You can't see them, but they slosh back and forth. It's called the damper system, as you engineers know, and that keeps the balance in this building. Now, next door here, as Jim Gensch's 150 North Riverside. Next door here is another postcard. Hitler's ascending, Bauhaus is closed, Mies comes to Chicago. Chicago, at Armour Institute, or today's IIT, we did not say Bauhaus so much. We say, a lot of people would say international, West Bauhaus.
Sau lưng mình là một cái tòa nhà rất là cao cả nhà.
God is in the details. Some of us just call this Owings and Merrill were huge followers of Mies. They founded their firm around the time that Mies arrived. They're all over the world today. I had a little trick to connect Mies and Skidmore, and I mean no disrespect to either firm. When someone dubbed Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, the three blind Mies, because they were so taken with his design. So this is what we mentioned so far today. There's modern international Chicago's open air day. We've got a fifth style that we're talking about on the way home, keeping track of our styles. Next door, all in Central Muslim. Chicago is a huge mail-order city. This building is almost 2.7 million square feet. Got a 19 Skidmore, Owings and Merrill in the firm. We really owe the Bangladesh-born Dr. Fazlul Khan. He was the engineer and the architect. They came up with that bundling, or what we call tubular. You see how Sears or Willis goes to 54th and then it's set back at the 66th? If you go to the 90th and the last two go to 110. The analogy's made. If you're holding 9 straws in your hand like this, they're varying heights. There's much more strength than if they were one solid mass, and that's what we call the tubular or the bundling. Agriculture. She's on the board of trade. Darren Stewart sculpting her in the gallery. On the back side of that beautiful deco building, you see a postmodern, blue glass, also beautiful. It's got a circular piece on top. It's actually 8-sided, but that piece represents the trading floor, the pit. That's Helmut Jahn's from 1980, and Jahn sadly passed in a bike accident last year, so the local architect is very well respected. Next passed in 1912. Next to it, you see the building, the balconies of varying sizes. It's got quite a few nicknames, which I'll share in a moment, but the architect is Ralph Johnson of Perkinsville. He did the Boeing building. He did this one about 20 years later, about 2010. The other was about 1992. So I'll wait till we come out. This is a noisy bridge.
Rồi chuyến đi đã kết thúc cả nhà ơi. Chúc cả nhà một ngày thật vui vẻ nha. Cảm ơn cả nhà theo dõi. Bye bye cả nhà. Cả nhà đón xem những video tiếp theo của mình nhé. Bye bye.